Hi there, and welcome back to Riella's Army of Dolls, where I talk all things fashion doll. Now, several videos ago, I did a box opening and a review of the new GlamourOz dolls from Jozef Szekeres. They are awesome dolls made right here in Australia, and they fit in well with the 16-inch doll world, even though they're about 18 inches tall. It's so exciting when there are new dolls coming out for us because so many of these wonderful collector dolls are not being produced anymore. And that makes it really hard for us to add to our collection, find new and exciting things to discover. So I love it when we have a new doll to explore, play with and dress. Jozef's whole idea with the GlamourOz dolls was to create a really high fashion, tall model whose stature resembles a little bit more closely the fashion royalty or the Mitzi dolls with the long glamorous legs to make them real catwalk models, but who could still fit the vast majority of 16-inch fashion doll clothes produced by other companies like the Tonner Company, Jean Marshall dolls and so on. If you haven't watched my other video yet, please go and watch that now. I will add a link that you can click on to go there. But today I'm going to be having a look at a new doll. This is Lucille Lei Executive Day to Night. She has an Asian sculpt and a darker skin tone, and I think she's going to look amazing in a whole variety of clothing. What I want to see is how well she fits all the different clothing available for this size of doll and also similar ones. So I'll be trying her in a whole range of clothes for 16-inch and also for 18-inch doll clothes and deciding what fits best and what maybe doesn't quite look right on this stature of doll. So let's get her out and get her dressed. All the GlamourOz dolls come in the same nicely decorated box that have these stylized designs of the real clothing fashions that these dolls wear. They also have a partially handwritten COA that shows the limited edition. They are quite small editions, and that may mean that in future these dolls do go up in value. So this is number 24 of 375 of the Lucille Lei doll. You can see that really beautiful and unique face with the dark, rich skin tone. This doll is one of the more expensive GlamourOz dolls, and I think it's probably because of her skin tone. She comes with a wonderful outfit. All of these dolls have very high-end clothing and accessories, really along the lines of Integrity Toys dolls in terms of the quality. Everything is fully lined and has these really wonderful little details to them. The outfit fits her like a glove, but of course she only comes with one. I especially love the shoes that come with this one. They have some really amazing features, including the rhinestone on the front and these little frill bits at the back that are a little bit hard to get on with her tights on. I think they would fit her perfectly without, but with them, just a little bit challenging. She also has some really cute extras that all match well with the same rhinestone and sparkle details. One particularly fun feature of the GlamourOz dolls, as opposed to many other fashion dolls, is that they come with detachable feet, so she can have the heeled feet, which are standard, or the flat feet, which are extra, and she also has lots of additional hands that you can swap out, so she can create a whole variety of poses. That's going to mean that she can wear a greater variety of clothing than some dolls, or get at least shoes, and also that she is easier to dress than a doll who doesn't have detachable hands. Now, to get a good idea of what she's likely to be able to wear, I'm going to undress her and have a bit of a comparison with some of the other dolls that resemble her. Out of the box, the GlamourOz doll body is incredibly elegant and feminine. It does have a very tall look, and I have sort of complained about this before. But I have to say that aesthetically, it really reminds me of the fashion royalty body from Integrity Toys, with a very similar form, just on a larger scale. We've still got the same long legs, the same elegant body and torso design, and these really do look similar. The head is perhaps scaled up a tiny bit more, which adds to the slightly more cartoony style of the GlamourOz doll that I do think is one of the appealing things about this doll, that she has her own style. Jozef's website describes these dolls as the tall poppies of the international catwalk, and you can see why. They really do look statuesque. But I want to now see how closely their body resembles that of other dolls to see how well they're going to share clothes despite that height difference. Aesthetically, they were very, very similar to fashion royalty. So the obvious doll to compare with first is the 16-inch doll from Integrity Toys. So this is a Toolabelle. There are several different 16-inch versions, obviously the FR16 as well. All the bodies are quite similar, and you can see here that this one definitely has that height difference, but we can see that the torso looks amazingly similar. The bust of the GlamourOz doll is slightly larger, but we can see a very, very similar form to the hips and the waist, and very much the similar definition around the throat and around the body as a whole. The torso may be just slightly longer on the GlamourOz doll, but overall we have a very similar doll. The legs are, of course, significantly shorter, and that's going to be the case with all the dolls in this size range. So also from Integrity Toys is the later version of Jean Marshall, and I'm only going to be comparing dolls with similar articulation today, so I won't look at the older Jean Marshall, and her proportions are very similar as I've shown in my comparison video of that body. Now you can see that this Jean is just slightly shorter than the Toolabelle doll from Integrity Toys. I have her standing on a little bit of paper just to keep her stable, but that just gives her a tiny bit of extra height as well. So she is a little bit shorter again. I do think that the Integrity Toys 16-inch body is the closest in height to the GlamourOz of all the doll bodies in the 16-inch range. We've also got a lot more differences in the form and figure of Jean Marshall. Her torso is slightly shorter again, but not significantly. Her bust sits up a tiny bit higher, and so does her waist. So I'm guessing that not all clothes are going to fit or be shareable, because if they have a really defined waist, we may find that it's not quite in the right place for the GlamourOz doll. Nonetheless, visually, the proportions look quite similar. Jean's waist is a little bit skinnier. She is known for that hourglass shape, but her hips and her shoulders look roughly the same. Her bust, yes, is a little bit smaller. Tyler Wentworth from the Robert Tonner Company is one of the other most well-known fashion dolls in the 16-inch size, and like Jean, you can see that she is a little bit shorter not only than the GlamourOz doll but than the Integrity Toys 16-inch doll. She doesn't have quite the same defined waist as Jean, so we're probably going to find that clothing is a closer fit between GlamourOz and Tyler Wentworth and similar dolls. If I lift her up to compare the torsos, she has a similar sized torso, not quite as long, but getting there. Her bust sits up a little bit higher and is a bit pointier and less rounded. So we may find that, yeah, clothes that are very defined around the bust may not be a perfect fit. GlamourOz waist looks to sit just slightly lower, but I don't think that it's going to be a significant difference. GlamourOz has a more defined waist than Tyler Wentworth. So again, clothes that are really, really neatly fitted may not be shareable, but my guess is that those two are going to share nearly everything. Now, Ellowyne Wilde, of course, has a different storyline, a different aesthetic, and she has a younger body, you know, more like a teenager, I guess, than an adult fashion woman, and you can see that shown in the comparison here. Ellowyne Wilde has a much thicker waist, smaller bust, and her legs as well are a little bit thicker. That's not going to make much difference unless we're talking about pants, though. I do think that although some clothes are going to be shareable between Ellowyne Wilde and the GlamourOz model, it is going to be a little bit trickier, especially because of the lack of a definition of the waist. That said, the overall form is still roughly similar. The hips look about the same width, the shoulders about the same width. Something that has a tight bust on Ellowyne is not going to be able to be worn by GlamourOz, though. The Alex doll from Madame Alexander is the other highly articulated fashion doll that I own. She is the shortest of all when I see them standing here, and I have often heard her described as 15¼ inch, whereas the others get 16 inch. So you can see that she is a fair bit shorter. Her body shape is kind of the most clunky of them, the least sort of realistic in its form. But having a look here, it's also the one that is closest in length to the GlamourOz torso, and so that may help. Like some of the others, her waist is a little bit higher, and therefore, again, stuff that is really closely fitted could be problematic. Her bust also sits up slightly higher, but it's also a little bit larger than some of the others. So we may find that clothing has a better shape to fit around the bust if it is made for the Alex doll. Final doll in this size range to compare is Robert Tonner's newer RTB 101 body. This one has become more and more popular, especially with the Grace dolls like mine here. And so there are quite a few clothing items out there that fit RTB 101. Now, she is actually the tallest of all the dolls here except for GlamourOz. She's just fractionally taller than the Integrity Toys body, and that's a good thing. However, her shape is perhaps the least similar other than Ellowyne Wilde. You can see that the torso is again about the same height, but if you look at the widths, this one is the most different. Her bust is significantly smaller, her waist is significantly wider, and her whole body looks to be just a little bit wider. So I'm guessing that many clothes are just going to be a little bit too large on GlamourOz. In terms of shoes, many of these dolls can share shoes, the RTB 101 and Ellowyne Wilde being the exceptions. Their feet are slightly bigger. Alex, sometimes her shoes can be shared with other dolls, and sometimes they are a little bit too small. Now, I know that GlamourOz's feet have been designed to fit shoes similar to Jean Marshall, Tonner Tyler, and the Integrity Toys dolls. So I'm quite aware she's going to fit the same shoes, but we can also test that out. Now, those were the 16-inch dolls, but as the GlamourOz doll is actually an 18-inch doll, there are two others to compare her with. The first one is from, well, in fact, they're both from Robert Tonner. The first one is Evangeline Gastly. Now, she is an 18-inch slim doll, and if you have a look at her, this body is astoundingly similar to the GlamourOz. She's nearly the identical height. Even her head, I said that Lucille Lei's head is slightly larger in scale than some of the others. Well, I think Evangeline's is bigger again, but they're actually very close. The busts look very similar in size. Evangeline's waist might be just fractionally higher than the GlamourOz waist, and of course her torso is a little bit longer here, but it isn't, I don't think it is significant enough to mean that anything is going to be problematic. Between legs, roughly the same length. Evangeline's feet are much bigger, and so I'm sure that shoes will not be able to be shared between them, but I have high hopes for nearly all clothes being a perfect fit. Now, the other 18-inch doll, she's an older doll, so she doesn't have the articulation, but this is Kitty Collier, also from Robert Tonner. Now, initially I thought she was going to be completely different and problematic to share clothes because I thought she was a bit thicker, but actually when I have a look at them side by side, the difference is not as significant. Kitty Collier sort of reminds me a bit more of Ellowyne Wilde in her form, you know, a little bit thicker, slightly smaller bust. She again has the slightly longer torso, thicker legs, larger feet, but I think that especially dresses are probably going to be able to be shared. We will find out though. I'm not quite sure about this one. You can see they've got significant differences, but this overall general shape and size looks pretty close. The Jean Marshall outfits from Integrity Toys do fit, but with varying degrees of success. The swimsuit from Star Entrance gift set is quite stretchy and it has a lot of give and really goes on and fills out this figure beautifully. Whereas the Zita Charles parfait gown that is really tightly fitted with darting, hemming, and just no give at all. Really sits awkwardly on this body. It doesn't do up. The Tyler Wentworth gowns, on the other hand, are really a breath of fresh air. These are magnificent. Now, I have purposefully chosen these two examples as being some of the longest gowns by the Tonner Company. We have the blue gown is High Style Sydney, and the multicolour gown is Pleats Pleat from the Brenda Star line, and they both fit magically. They are also wearing the shoes from these outfits. The fit around the waist is gorgeous. The length is nearly long enough, with her feet just peeping out. I had high hopes for the Integrity Toys gowns, but when I put these on, I am sorely disappointed. The Toolabelle coated in glamour dress is just far too tight. I think maybe it is too closely fitted. And the Poppy Parker Midnight Sparkle gown that has a lot more give just hangs awkwardly on this body, and the length really doesn't look right when I put it on. The Alex outfits, on the other hand, look surprisingly good. Millennium Ball is a tad too short, but it is hard to tell. Around the bust, it is clear that it doesn't really work, and she is rather popping out. Paris Sold Out Show is a gorgeous length on this doll, and the colour made Lucille Lei's skin really shine. Paris's dress also just has a little bit more give in the fabric, so it is rather more forgiving on the body. The Ellowyne Wilde outfits both look much better on than I was actually expecting, but it is important to note that the top of raw edges didn't do up properly, but that is hidden by the jacket, and actually it looks really nice on. I even managed to get the boots on, although Lucille's feet are kind of swimming in them. Royal Woe also fits quite nicely. It doesn't fully button up at the front, but again, it's actually a little bit hard to tell when it's on. These two dresses for the RTB 101 Grace body are both from the Virtual Doll Convention mystery box, and these are some of the ones that actually fit Lucille the best of everything. They are just slightly loose around the upper body, but it's fairly hard to tell unless you look closely, and the lengths hang pretty much as I would want them to. The opera dress a tad shorter, but still stunning. Knowing how well the dolls fit the Tyler Wentworth outfits, I decided to also put them in some of the Mod British Mirds clothes because they are pretty much interchangeable. I am so pleased I did. These are absolutely fabulous. I just cannot state how amazing these look. They have this adorable pop art style, and they just fit these dolls to a T and really match the aesthetic that Jozef's going for. Moving on to the 18-inch dolls, I am genuinely pleasantly surprised by how well the Kitty Collier clothing is going on to GlamourOz. I will admit that these outfits are both pinned at the back. The Girl Next Door swimsuit and the beautiful Serenade gown, they are the perfect length and they really look adorable. They will need some adjustments if you're going to do this, but I think that it is worth it. Finally, I have Evangeline Ghastly, and all I can say is wow. I am having trouble deciding which of these outfits is more stunning. Carnilla's Evening Rainbow has such a beautiful colour, and the stretch to it gives it a glorious fit. The Black Raven coat just has this beautiful simplicity to it. The styling is goth, and it may not be to everybody's taste, but it is sure fabulous and adds to that cartoony feel that Lucille rocks. Lucille's original clothing, of course, fits her to perfection, and it is a beautiful outfit. I love the design, which sort of has this kind of houndstooth hint to it while not actually being that, while having a slightly more unique oriental pattern. I really like the turned sleeves here, which add a real pop, and also the button feature at the throat. I'm not personally the biggest fan of midi dresses though, so I guess it's a pity for me that Jozef isn't yet offering fashions that are separate to the dolls. He is talking about it. I have seen it on his Facebook page, and I think that's a fantastic idea because it's going to add play value to these dolls, give you some other options. There are some gowns that I would really like to get, like especially the glittering gala Coatline gown. For me personally, I tend to choose either full length or mini when I go for dresses, and you can probably see that in my selection of dolls behind me, that the vast majority are wearing full length gowns, but we've also got some minis because I just find those are the most fun styles for me. So although I really like Lucille's outfit, I think it's incredibly well made and has some cool features, like even these little pleats under the arms just really add style and pop. But I want her in gowns or I want her in minis. And of everything I've tried on, the best gowns have got to be the Evangeline Ghastly ones. They fit like an absolute glove on this body and the height is simply perfect. The shoes, no good at all, but the gowns are amazing. Not necessarily going to be the style you're looking for, at least not for all of them, because they are very gothic and they have a fairly cartoony feel. But that said, the GlamourOz face, I think, goes reasonably well with that sort of cartoony feel. Depending on which one you're picking, it's going to look amazing on her. For the minis, I really find that the GlamourOz face lends itself to a 60s look. And so for me, the Mod British Mirds, Summers and Fields, you know, they tend to go by a few different names. Those outfits are just incredible on these dolls. They just pop. And even the shoes are going to fit, although you will find that a lot of the Mod British Mirds shoes have degraded over time, some of them to the point of not being wearable anymore. So I guess just be careful of that. But I think, you know, she's such a fun doll to play with, and it's really cool that she fits so many different outfits. Though I would love it personally if she was just a tiny bit shorter, so that the gown length was going to be right on a greater variety of clothing. If you have this doll and you've tried on other clothing that you think fits even better than what I have shown you, please do leave that in the comments and maybe I can do a video later where I look at some of those. And if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please make sure you go and do that right now. There will be a button that you can click at the end of this video or right underneath.